what does the administration consider your biggest achievement in foreign policy in this first year? And also, what lessons have you learned from what is arguably the biggest failure, which is Afghanistan?
This is a great question. I want to be thoughtful about it. I want to talk to the president about it, and I'm happy to do that. Go ahead.
There are several progressive groups and lawmakers who are increasingly vocalizing the idea that high inflation is being driven by corporate greed, including companies with high profits, some of whom have met at the White House with the president in recent months. Does the president endorse that idea? Does he think that corporate greed is the big driver of inflation right now?
Well, I think that the president thinks the way people across the country, American families, digest inflation is by price increases. And if you look at industry to industry, it's a little different. So, for example, the president, the Secretary of Agriculture have both spoken to what we've seen as the greed of meat conglomerates. That is an area where people go to the grocery store and they're trying to buy a pound of meat, 2 pounds of meat, 10 pounds of meat. The prices are higher. That is, in his view, and the view of our Secretary of Agriculture, because of, you could call it corporate greed, sure. You could call it jacking up prices.
Why is it that there are still Americans stranded in Afghanistan?
3 weeks from now, a month from now, 2 months from now, back in August, we would help them get out. And that is something that we've delivered on our word on. I would know important for people to understand who are there, that even if they decided not to, or even if they decided not to today, we are still going to help them depart, and there's evidence of that.
479 left behind is a lot higher than the 100 to 200 that President Biden was talking about at the end of August.
479 who we've helped depart since August.
He said that he thought that we believe there are 100 to 200 with some intention to leave. So how'd you guys get the numbers?
There were people who determined they wanted to leave since then, and it is our responsibility to help them depart. So that's evidence of our commitment to do exactly that.
And is this something, as there are now at least about a dozen who want to leave right now, is this something the president works on every day?
Certainly, he receives regular updates from his team, and we, the State Department and other national security officials really lead this effort. I would just reiterate that the United States does not track or put a tracker on American citizens traveling overseas.
When you say that we've seen an increase in crime over the course of the pandemic, there are a range of reasons for that. Would you consider one of the reasons in the range prosecutors who are cutting people who are accused of many criminal offenses loose too quickly?
I am not, as I wasn't yesterday, going to give an assessment for every motivation or reason for crime in different communities across the country.
There are some reports that these smash and grab robberies are being organized on social media platforms. Is the administration doing anything about that?
Well, we are monitoring, of course, these thefts very closely, as we've talked about a bit in here. In terms of how they're being organized or orchestrated, we'd really refer you to our law enforcement authorities.
The reason that I ask, you guys have not been afraid to call out social media companies, like when you thought that they were a platform for COVID disinformation. You said that that was a public health matter. Why not call them out for this? Do you not consider this a public health matter?
Well, we believe that there should be investigations that should occur to determine the origin and what prompted any of these thefts.
Everyone. Will the president have a press conference anytime soon here?
We'll see. I will let you know if we do, Ryan.
Yeah,
You're invited.
Thank you so much. We'd love to see you.
Follow up on the debt limit. What do you say to Americans who see this as yet another example of Congress kicking the can down the road?
Well, I would say that in what way? I'm not sure who is saying that.
It until 2023, but it's going to come up again right after the midterms. What do you say to people who say we're just going to be having the same conversation a little bit over a year from now?
I'm not sure what American person is saying that or is concerned about the debt limit, but maybe there is somebody you've met on the street. I don't know, but I will say that our view, the president's view, is that this has been done in a bipartisan way. The American people shouldn't be worried about whether or not elected officials are doing what they should do and raising the debt limit. This is something that should just be done in due course, as it's been done more than 80 times, to quote Josh, in the past, and that it shouldn't be something that consumes weeks, months of time. It should be done because we want to avoid default.
You said the social spending package would lower costs in various areas like child care, but would it lower inflation?
That's what dozens of economists have said.
Okay, even though like child care could go down, but food prices could go up, they believe that the more spending that happens, the food prices could come back down. as well as the other things people are buying?
Well, 56 economists say that Build Back Better will help, quote, alleviate some of the strain caused by inflation. And I think what's important to note here is, and you're an economic expert of sorts, even if you play one on TV, but I know you actually are, is that as we talk about inflation and data, very important way to look at it and evaluate, look at the Federal Reserve projections. American people, how they're experiencing this at home is a rise in costs in different areas, right? Whether it's meat prices when they're buying burgers or gas prices or other areas. So why we explain Build Back Better the way we do is to convey exactly the areas to the American public where it will lower costs. Childcare is a huge cost burden on a lot of families across the country, and it will have an immediate impact next year.
I think you said last week that you were working on a plan to help students pay. But what about President Biden's campaign to forgive or cancel $10,000 in student debt? Pardon me. What is the message to those people who feel that he's yet to follow through on that promise?
If Congress sends him a bill, he's happy to sign it. They haven't sent him a bill on that yet. Go ahead.
You were asked if the president works on getting, these Americans out of Afghanistan every day. You said that he receives regular updates. Obviously, this is still a top priority for him, right?
Absolutely. But I think it's important for people to understand the hard work that's being done day in and day out is through our diplomatic team, the State Department team.
On Build Back Better, is the president kind of in this moment of the mind that the final package will look like whatever can get 50 votes?
That's usually how it works, isn't it?
It depends on if you have red lines, what you've laid out. I know.
I didn't mean to give you a hard time. Yes. Look. I think the president is the first to say, having done this as a senator for 36 years, that progress often requires compromise, and you've seen that already to date.
Tonight, a federal appeals court upheld the ruling that required the administration to reinstate the Remain in Mexico border policy.
Yeah.
Do you know if there's any plan for the administration to file an appeal to the Supreme Court to finally settle once and for all whether this policy still needs to exist?
Well, you know where we stand from a policy standpoint on this. We believe it's ineffective, inhumane, and the Secretary of Homeland Security has conveyed multiple memos in that regard, which is, of course, consistent with the president's view. I'd point you to the Department of Justice for any legal plans, but certainly, we note that decision this morning, and obviously would reiterate that this is a program that we disagree with, the injunction dictating court-ordered implementation remains in effect, so we continue to comply with it in good faith.
There is another policy that's in place that a court didn't require you to put in place, and that is Title 42. I'm just curious if the plan is to keep it in place going into next year.
That guidance is determined by the CDC and our health experts.